Welcome to the second edition of the Politics Unplugged podcast. I'm joined here today with Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richer, and of course, our intrepid producer Colin, who you can't see if you're watching this on YouTube, is over there working all the dials. So thanks for tuning in, downloading this thing, and taking and giving us another listen. I really do appreciate it. And we're bringing on Mr. Richer to talk a little bit about, or a lot about, his defamation lawsuit that he filed last week against Kari Lake. And just kind of recap, Kari Lake has been claiming falsely that, she lost the election because of steps taken by you and by other county officials, particularly. She claims and has said over and over, made these claims that have been disproven in court and in other areas, that you intentionally put printed 19-inch images on 20-inch ballot paper, which caused the machines to malfunction. She falsely claimed that, you inserted 300,000 bogus ballots into the count. Your lawsuit is you're not asking for money in this, or there's no specific money, monetary.
Well, damage is to be specified in trial.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So nothing specific, but you also do want her to remove those posts, those false posts, from her social media sites. And the court to declare those comments as false, correct?
Correct, because this is first and foremost about these false statements and about stopping these false statements, so there aren't more people running around thinking that I'm some, America's most wanted criminal.
Yeah, and this has been going on. So I really want to start. This has been going on since November. Walk me through the timing of why you're filing the lawsuit now. What prompted this at this point?
Well, thanks for having me. Following up on Governor Ducey is a big honor, and that's very meaningful to me, so I appreciate it. Why are we following this now? So, this was after I've exhibited hopefully quite a bit of patience that can, and we waited, and obviously this went on for about a year during the campaign cycle, not with respect to these specific claims, but with respect to allegations, insinuations that I was a criminal, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. She won the primary after saying that the primary was going to be fraudulent and stolen, and then she proceeded to the November general election. Obviously, that was a close contest, but when the final results were tallied, she didn't win, and then she had every right, and she did, to file an election contest. That went to trial. She leveled a whole bunch of claims. Those were disproven at court. It was appealed to the Court of Appeals. It was appealed to the Arizona Supreme Court. Then it went back, and we had a second trial, and then after all of that, I was hopeful that we would be able to move on, that she would find some new passion, she was finding some new political pursuit, but of course it kept being the same thing, and so it dawned on me that this was not going to end through a natural course. This was not going to subsume itself to other interests, and so at some point I said, well, she's not getting a new job, I am the job, and it doesn't seem that simply winning in election contests in court or pushing back through papers, through reports, and correcting the record is sufficient. And so I ultimately decided to file this lawsuit to clear the record and to begin the healing process for my reputation.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this. You're no stranger to politics. Politics is a rough world, rough and tumble world.
Sure.
And the bar set for a public official like you to prove defamation is very, very high.
Yeah, but my fact pattern is fairly unique because it is these exact claims that she alleged in a court of law, and we have 4 times now courts of law have said these claims have no basis in reality, these claims are false. And so if anyone ever in the history of defamation should be put on constructive notice that these claims were false, it is she. And so she proceeded nonetheless, and we have also a good body of evidence that suggests that this is malicious. And so those are the elements of defamation in addition to the harm, and those I also have court filings for, in that people have been criminally prosecuted for trying to cause me harm as a result of these statements by Kari Lake. So if you add all that up together, we have an exceptionally strong defamation case despite being a public official.
Yeah, well, it's just people who might be listening then, the public that look at this. Again, you're in public official. Politics is as they say, it's not beanbags. explain, like, why, and walk us through what's happened, because some people might say, well, this is just little Stephen Richard. He's got his feels hurt, and he's trying to get back at Kari like that. Maybe walk us through why that's not the case.
There have been hundreds of thousands of people, and that's no exaggeration, who have said nasty things. And this isn't about First Amendment protected speech like, I hate the way you look, I think you're terrible, I think you're incompetent, I think you're even just sort of broadly like a bad person. All of those things are fair game, and she has certainly said them, as have other people. But this is with respect to two highly specific allegations that she has made, accusing me of specific criminal activities. So this, again, isn't that he's a criminally minded person or something like that, although that would be questionable too. But this is, he did these two very horrible, very specific, heinous criminal acts that I have constructive knowledge are false, and I proceed recklessly nonetheless to continue to accuse him of this. And I broadcast this to millions of people, some of whom take that and then do some really horrible things. So great respect for the First Amendment, great appreciator of the protections it affords, but it does not allow you to continually make false statements about a person. And I'm afforded the same opportunities as anyone else to ultimately clear my name in court. And like I said, I had hoped it would run its natural course, but sadly it hasn't.
And I'm going to get too much off on a tangent here, but it is brought up in the lawsuit that says that you'd face, quote, some dire consequences from this. You spent a lot of money upgrading a security system at your home. Besides just the death threats, you've also lost friendships over that. Maybe walk us through a little bit of what you've been living with, because a lot of attention recently has been given to county board member Bill Gates, who admitted he had PTSD from this experience after his involvement in his role in the 2020 election. What have you been living through? Yeah,
so anyone who knows me would know I'm no shrinking violet who has receded from society, but certainly the world in which I operated has changed, and I have lost a number of relationships. I've had former friends who have known me who have said, why did you steal this election from Kari Lake? I've had family relationships that have fallen off as a result of them feeling that I was part of some larger scheme to steal the election from somebody. And so it is really disappointing and mystifying to me that people who have known me for a good number of years and who have never met this person and who have never looked into these claims would immediately take her side. But the political environment is such now that a lot of people are just primed to give this credence and to want to believe and to make sense of the world that they can't make sense of right now because they don't think that Republican candidates should be losing in these contests, or Joe Biden didn't campaign, or Katie Hobbs didn't debate, and so I can't make sense of that. And so here's this theory, and at the center of this theory is allegedly, according to Kari Lake, Stephen Richard. And so it has manifested in some lost relationships. I probably went to over 100 grassroots Republican events in the last prior to all of this happening, and that's something I don't do. Now, I have different outlets, and I refuse to go quietly, so to speak, and so I've just been speaking to different groups, but I don't celebrate that. I mourn every single one of those lost friendships. I mourn the fact that there are a good number of people who I formerly considered friends who now think I'm a legitimate criminal, like should be behind bars.
And we talked a little bit about this. It seems like you in your mind already have the fact pattern laid out. But is there something else? Your attorneys are going to be seeking some more information. Is there a discovery process? What kind of information beyond the public statements in the court and the court rulings? What else is out there that you may be seeking to prove this case?
Sure. Well, this will proceed as any civil litigation will. And so she has waived service, and she has 60 days from the date of our complaint to file an answer or a response. And then we would eventually proceed to discovery. And during discovery, we would likely solicit things that would show further evidence of malice, further evidence of knowledge. We would produce some of the conversations that we've had, even with members of her staff who asked questions about election administration. We would produce additional statements showing that, by no means was I even involved in the decision on what to print on election day, much less certainly wasn't making a conscientious decision to sabotage the process. We could show in discovery that every single ballot was still counted, and that there was, to the extent it needs to be further established, though it has already been established by multiple courts of law, that the 2022 election was fair, and the people who won were the winners.
Well, it's because, it could be said that maybe part of this exercise, too, is to get into that discovery process and get more information out from the Lake campaign. Is that part of the thought pattern here with you?
No, it's, in my mind, not even terribly necessary from all of the public statements. But yes, we will take advantage of the same rules of civil procedure that are available to any litigant.
And is a settlement, would you agree to that? What would that look like? Is that even a possibility in your mind, or you just want the courts to figure this out?
Of course, the settlement requires both parties, and so I can't speak to, I've only seen what her public statements are in the aftermath of this, and they don't suggest somebody who wants to immediately correct the record. But what's most important to me, and that's what I can tell you, is that these statements be categorically defined as false, that an apology be made, and that no further statements be made saying that I'm a criminal and did these criminal acts.
Okay, and reaction to the lawsuit has been a little bit mixed. I think there was a couple of.
I've seen one article.
Yeah, okay,
that's it.
Yeah, there's an article.
I think it's about 95.5 at this point.
Focus on the little bit mixed. I'm going to focus on that. Get your reaction to that, because there was a column that said you should drop this, quote, silly lawsuit. Why? What's your reaction to reading stuff like that?
So I have great respect for Phil.
We're talking about Phil Bowe as the columnist.
Yeah, and if this was, somebody on gatewaypundit.com, I wouldn't even read it. I wouldn't have put any stock in it. And so,
not a regular reader of Gateway Pundit.
Well, unfortunately, we're all too aware of when Gateway Pundit publishes some things because it manifests in some ugliness for us. But with respect to Phil's column, I would say, one, if you believe that I have and my family has in any way, shape, or form enjoyed this, then I would have invited you to spend November, December, January of this past year with us and just see how horrible it was. Secondly, I would say, what would you have me do? Because the status quo is unacceptable to me and to the elections community, that this continues on every single day. And so simply pushing back in the media, simply correcting the record has been insufficient. And like I said, there's a continued effort to really sully my name, and I'm not the type of person who would just stand by and let the bullies continue to bully. He says that we've won, but I didn't run against Kari Lake. She wasn't my political opponent. I didn't win anything. As far as I'm concerned, these claims have continued to run, and I didn't see an end in sight, and so we're trying a different tactic.
Yeah. Well, you can and you continue to be on Kari Lake's mind, and apparently in her dreams.
Yes.
There's some snippets of a book of hers that is coming out where you and County Supervisor Bill Gates are featured prominently in a dream that she said she supposedly had. I won't get into the details of all that kind of stuff.
It's a very detailed dream.
Yeah, it's a very detailed dream with very exact quotes,
yes.
Which I found very interesting. Be that as it may, Your thoughts on that? You're in this book. You're featured, obviously, in this dream sequence, and from what you've seen, your thoughts on that?
I suspected that I would be mentioned in the book, but I thought it would be more in the capacity in which I have been mentioned previously numerous times.
And we've only seen like 4 pages of this book.
Right,
so
and
sure.
I have not purchased a copy. I haven't read it, but no, I didn't have on my bingo card that I would appear in a dream and duct tape her and throw her in the back of the car to be killed in the desert. Hopefully it goes without saying that that has never been on my mind. That is not just,
we can
no,
we can
just
stipulate.
no, just absolutely
we can stipulate
no.
that. That's not something you've been thinking of. We'll stipulate on that.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit now, moving forward with your political future here. You know, we've talked a little bit before, and you've said to me that you are going to be running again.
I think you were the first one who, when we were casually just giving you a tour of the elections facility, and then I get a sneak attack from Dennis.
It's what we do in the media. It's the gotcha question.
I know. I don't know. You know, and in my approach to all this is a little bit different in that, you know, I don't play with, you know, trying to hold it out as if it's any big secret. But yeah, I am going to run for re-election. I haven't formally put in the paperwork. I haven't formally announced, but I'm starting to run the traps. And like I said to you, I think previously, it's very meaningful work. It's a great team. And I think that we've accomplished a good number of things, even if it was just a few weeks ago, rolling out Maricopa title alert. And there are a few more things like that that I want to get done. This is not my lifetime career, but I think that I can continue to move this office forward, and it'll be benefit from me being there for at least another few years.
So give me your thoughts on winning. You know, if you run for re-election for recorder, do you do that as a Republican? Because I have to tell you, I think, you know, you do have significant challenges running in a Republican primary. You know that probably a lot better than I do. There's a good percentage.
And quite frankly, that goes back to what we were talking about. It hurts when in a Republican primary when a prominent Republican figure is saying that you're a criminal. So even when we're talking about defamation, even something like that is a component of damages. I don't deserve to be called a criminal. I don't deserve to have that reputation sullied within the Republican primary. Yes, I do realize. I don't know what percentage that is. I will tell you I've started making calls, and it has been overwhelmingly positive. Also, I don't know who that candidate will be. You know, it's always a little different when there's a presumptive challenge versus an actual person who brings his or her own challenges
or
and
several
baggage.
Challenges.
Yeah. And so I will say that I'm a candidate who, as a first-time candidate, beat the incumbent, who then went on to win Secretary of State by 6%. That's Adrian Fontes, who slaughtered Mark Fincham in a favorable year to Republicans. So I think that, I clearly did something right in that race, and I would say don't count me out, even if you're of that mind.
So you would run re-election and in a Republican primary. No thought about running as an independent.
As an independent or as a Dem, I've long been a member of the Republican Party. I don't have plans to change that. The 2016 party platform, which is the last Republican Party platform, is still one of free enterprise, rule of law, individual responsibility. Those are the principles to which I adhere. As I've stated, hopefully very clearly over the last 2.5 years, I don't like a lot of this new stuff, and I don't think it's healthy for society. I don't think that some of the leaders are people that are worthy of admiration right now within the Republican Party. You had Governor Ducey on previously. He talked about free enterprise. Sign me up. If it's a Governor Ducey party, sign me up, and let's talk about front of
Ducey party, though.
I know, and
he
contested that. He contested that. I would probably be a little more indulgent of that statement than he was. But that's also the product of he saw lots of aspects of public policy. I see one that is really at the heart of this sort of new Republican movement. I'm not trying to hide the fact that I am very much a incarnation of the sort of the McCain, Flake, Kyle, Ducey, Chamber of Commerce, Republican world. And a lot of people don't want that anymore, and that's fine. And we could, fight it out figuratively, not literally, in a free and fair election system. And of course, the irony of anyone who's saying that, well, I'm running against Richard because the election system is rigged, is like, well, then clearly you believe in it strongly enough to run against me. So
if what you're saying is if they believe that, then there's probably no chance then if they think that you're fixing elections that they'll ever win a primary. So why run?
It's illogical to begin with, and I don't even know how you launch a campaign that way. I would also say that a election denier would not fare well in a general election. And again, Mark Fincham got stomped by the guy that I beat previously.
But that's the issue. You got to get through the primary. That's the issue. That's the problem that a lot of, you mentioned, those old school Republican types, Kyle and Ducey and all those types. That's the problem you all face now, because the party is different. It's a lot different than it was probably when you started engaging in politics. And it's and I don't know if that message, resonates in the primary anymore.
Well, I don't know the path yet, and that's not being coy. That's being honest. I do know that I am borderline psychotically competitive, and that I'm betting on myself. I think that I will find the path, but I do think that there are new challenges, in part, again, tying us back to what we were originally talking about, in part because somebody has persisted in knowingly lying about me.
And then a final question, too. I've read somewhere, too, someone suggested that maybe you run for the Senate. Is that something that you've ever thought about? Have you been thinking about this?
So, because Phil is a respected conservative writer, it was kind of curious that in that same article that he was sort of criticizing me, he was signing himself up for supporting me for U.S. Senate because Bob Robb had written that. So obviously it's flattering.
But have you thought about it?
Yes, I have thought about it because I love public policy, and I would love to do essentially what Governor Ducey was talking about yesterday, which was bring a more free enterprise-friendly mindset to the U.S. Senate. And I also think that immigration reform would be hugely beneficial to. I mean, if you could be part of immigration reform, I think you would deserve a Nobel Prize, basically, and certainly Arizonans would love that. But for now, no. I'm not doing that. It is a order of magnitude very different, and it would also prohibit me from running this office. You can't run for an office like U.S. Senate and also run an office of 150 people. Yeah. I love my office right now of 150 people, and so I'm going to run for a smaller race, though still with 2.5 million registered voters and the size of Maricopa County. It's a big race, but I'm going to be part of this office and simultaneously run for this office. But like I said, this will be the only time I will run for re-election as recorder. And so then either back to business and law or on to something else.
All right. I'm going to have to end it there. I think that's all the questions we have, unless Colin, you have any questions?
Any general wisdom?
Any words of wisdom over there?
Is this just that you're going to talk about me after I leave, like you did with Governor Ducey?
We'll talk about you after you leave.
I feel like that's sort of unfair, but
so when you can't shut them up then.
When it's your podcast and you're the editor, it's amazing what you can do.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Stephen Richer, Maricopa County Recorder. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
And now I am joined by, again, our intrepid producer, Colin, here to kind of get some feedback and some thoughts about the interview we just wrapped up there with Stephen Richer. Obviously, love to get your thoughts, your takeaways on that. A lot of focus on that lawsuit there. What stood out for you with what Richard's trying to accomplish here with this lawsuit?
I mean, and particularly coming from a media standpoint, the thing we know about this is the bar's really high for a defamation lawsuit like this. So the interesting question to me is, can he meet it? Because the answer is almost always no. He may actually be able to do it.
Yeah, and one of the things is too, if you look at the Fox News lawsuit that they recently had to pay out on there. I mean, maybe there's some hope for Richard there if you're looking at Richard's point of view. But if you're in the Lake camp, you are hoping that high standard, that bar up there is pretty high and is hard to meet. Although Richard, lays out a pretty decent case. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not 100% sure about your background, but I'm pretty sure you don't have a law license.
I do not have a law license.
But the fact pattern there is Richard, points out, has been shown that she continuously makes these claims that have been shown to be false and to claim him and made against him. So I think that will be interesting to see how that plays out moving forward now in this environment.
Yeah, and one thing I think will be interesting is, so if he needs to show she has knowingly made these false statements, the statements have been shown over and over in court to be false, or at least to not have been proven at all. Does that equate to her knowing they are false?
Well, and the other thing too is, you got to watch, Camp Kari. What do they do with this? I mean, are they going to want to settle out of this? That's going to tell you a lot about how I think strong the case is, because they're looking for monetary damages, unspecified at this point. I don't know if this is proven, on this. I don't know what the monetary damages in a case like this could be. Obviously, Mr. Richard is claiming that his life has been radically changed by this. He's received death threats on this, lost friendships from people who used to be friends, who now think, according to him, think he's a criminal now. So I don't know where this goes. But I'm also interested, too. We talked a little bit about his political future out there. Again, I'm still skeptical about his chances in a Republican primary if he runs for reelection. Sounds like as for recorder in the Republican primary out there. What are your thoughts?
It's really hard to imagine him getting enough support from a Republican Party that has largely turned on him and turned on the notion that the elections are run fairly. He's been demonized by such a large group within the party. It's really hard to imagine him winning a primary there. Yeah,
and it's going to depend a lot on, I was just got off the phone with, with somebody here, some consultants. And I think in a situation like this, it's going to depend a lot on outreach to independent voters who can request a Democrat or Republican ballot, to get them to request that Republican ballot to vote for Stephen Richer in that primary. Because I do think if Richer is able to get through the primary, he is very difficult to beat in a general election.
Absolutely.
Under normal situations. If Trump gets the nomination again, who knows what that means, for the entire ballot from top to bottom on there. But I think he would be. I think he's got a lot of goodwill built up with even Democrat voters out there who appreciate him standing up to election deniers and election denialism.
And he's been very forward. He has been accountable every step of the way, has always addressed the allegations, no matter how absurd they may seem to him and to others.
Yeah. And one thing we do know, he's not going to run for the Senate.
No, he's not going to run for the Senate.
So I think there was some wishful thinking or some talk from some people that he might go ahead and do that. But I do think he said he doesn't see a path to victory as of yet. But I would suspect that he actually does. So otherwise he wouldn't be making this run. Or planning to make the run as he is right now. But again,
it's a lot of work and a lot of effort and personal aggravation to go through if you don't think you can win.
And a lot's going to depend on who does come out. It's interesting that nobody's really come out and said that they're going to run against him right now.
Yeah.
I think that says something. I don't know if it's everything, but it's something. And, so I think a lot's going to depend on that, and his success in that primary will depend largely upon who the challenger in the Republican primary will be. How far right are they? What kinds of claims they make? What's their history? What's their relationship with MAGA, with the American First Movement? I think a lot of that is going to determine his political future.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
All right, but overall, I thought it was a fun conversation. Your thoughts?
He was terrific.
All right.
Always very thoughtful and very well spoken. He was a good guest.